Thanks for joining me, guys. This is Joe from JS Bladecraft. So on this table here, you see RoseCraft blades. Now, I'm going to tell you what they are, and I'm going to tell you what they're not. What they're not is very hard use knives. They're not tactical fighters. They're not knives you're going to basically take through the wilderness and survival. They're not survival knives or anything like that. More of a light to medium task. Everyday EDC tools. And what they are is very stylistic, really beautiful designs and takes on knives that you don't see very often in terms of their color schemes, in terms of their blade contours, in terms of the variety. You can see basically all these knives are very different. They do a lot of worn clips. They actually, the Castoria, which I'm going to show now, is a spear point, which is very unique. You have the little chunk, which is probably, I would say, one of their toughest knives. They have probably two knives out of this batch, which is probably the little chunk and the Mohawk are going to be probably some really tough, harder use knives. Not hard use knives, but definitely great tough knives that you could use for work knives. I mean, I did a review on the little chunk. This thing has a great grip, a great handle, and it really fits nicely in the hand, and it handled basically the test very well. I was very impressed with basically what I was able to do with this little chunk. You know, no blade wiggle or anything like that. It handled it really well. And we all know the Mohawk. A lot of people love the Mohawk. Great price, and it's just a fantastic work knife. You know, Scab talking about the Mohawk all the time. He absolutely loves this knife. Probably these two are probably going to be one of their harder use knives. Okay, but pretty much for the most part, all of the rest of the knives, you got the more Milea, great blade contour, but it's not a very heavy duty knife. Handles cutting, handles slicing, handles everyday work that you need as a tool from an EDC, and the style is great. It's a really handsome looking knife. I love how they design their knives and how they execute their knives, but you have to put into perspective basically what they are and what they aren't. You have the OG, which is like a cleaver style type of blade, and this could be a pretty good food prep type of knife, you know, given the blade contour, nice, you know, electric blue, you know, accents. They just really sexy looking knives. They're really good looking knives. I love the look of all their knives, and they're a pleasure to carry. They're not too heavy in the pocket. Most of them are pretty much very low carry, and they handle pretty much tasks very well. Their blades are made very well, mostly D2. A lot of RPM 9 is pretty much their trademark steel. You have with their frame lock, this is probably the most expensive one they have, and this is a frame lock, the Juta. And, you know, the micarta scales, stainless steel with the frame lock, nice blade contour. And this is probably probably one of their stronger lockups, being a frame lock, and this handled the test pretty well. Then you have one of my favorites is going to be the Barra. This is like a bartender's tool. My favorite thing about this knife, along with the fact it's got a pretty nice blade on it to do some cutting, but it's more or less a bartender's knife. But see this clip over here? This thing is the most useful thing in my toolbox, is this little clip, this wedging tool, and this thing to kind of screw on my camera plates. I use this thing on a daily basis. This is always in my camera bag, and that's basically what they're doing, guys. They're giving you things that are tools, things that are going to basically, you're going to find use out of you carrying and using these knives every day. You're not going to go out and survive in the wilderness with these things. You know, it's just their everyday tools and a very, you know, handsome option. You know, the coolness factor of these knives is way high, and that's what I really like about them, is the fact that they're just freaking cool. They're cool ass knives. With that generous finger choil there, you can really choke up on it and really get into the point of the blade and have a lot of control on it. And what makes an otherwise small knife, adding that finger choil there, just makes it a very useful everyday type of knife. This is the Awanta slip joint, little guy. Really little guy. I think this is a bottle opener. I think you could probably put this on your keys and just carry this thing around. That WarnCraft blade, I can't imagine you're going to find a lot of uses out of this little knife in terms of carrying this thing every day, being a slip joint and all that. You know, it's got a strong lockup, and it's cute, guys. It's just a cute little freaking knife. I really could imagine putting this on my keys and carrying this around on my keys. Or this could act, I think it's a bottle opener. I think that's what it is. That's the Awanta. I'm going to review this a little closer soon as well. Obviously, you have the the Alenta, which is also really nice design, very nice knife. Again, not a hard use knife. Okay, I tried to push this a little bit, and I had some blade wiggle and stuff like that. The lock failed a little bit, but I was kind of doing things that you're not supposed to be doing with the knife. So you got to kind of know what you have in these RoseCraft blades, and they're not really meant or designed to be very hard use, survival, tactical wilderness freaking blades. They're just really cool looking, very nice concept designs, everyday light to medium carries for your everyday tool in your pocket. And that's pretty much what they are. All right, guys, so this is the RoseCraft Blades Castoria, okay? I really like the overall look of this knife. The Castoria, it's a Latin word for beaver. It's, from what they say on their site, it's a throwback to the legendary fur traders of the New World. Now, if I look at this, it kind of gives me like a little impression of like an airplane type of look, or a shark. I don't know, something like that. It could be a couple different things, but it's definitely a spear point. I like the fact that it's a spear point blade. That's the first. I don't have many spear point blades. I like just the whole look of this blade. It's a satin finish. It's a 3.9 inch D2 spear point. Let's get into the specs. It's got heavy swedging right on top here. Got a, like I said, brushed satin finish. It is about 1/8 inches thick. It's a manual flipper. Traditional button lock that releases with the lock up. Steel liners, split G10 handles, the red and black, really nice looking. It's available in black and red, black and orange, and also gray and black. It's got the rosebud shield on the G10. It's an ambidextrous tip up pocket clip. It's got a lanyard hole distinctively right at the end there. It's about 4.6 inches closed, meaning the handle, so it's got nice purchase here, closed, and it's about 8.5 inches overall, and it was designed by the great Andy Armstrong. So if we talk about the action of this, so it is a flipper, okay? It's a not very, snappy flipper, but it does the job. It kind of opens up. It doesn't impress me that much in terms of the deployment. As far as closing it, it's if I can get a better grip on it, it kind of really has a great one-hand operation in terms of the button lock close. And safety-wise, instead of having to have your fingers there, having your fingers completely away and kind of closing it, this is probably the safest mechanism in terms of an everyday carry, having that button close. And it's got great detent, basically, in terms of the open close. So as far as action is concerned, it is a great one-hand operation. It just doesn't impress me in terms of the clasp, well, just the lock, I guess, because it's just a button lock. It's got kind of like a soft open, it doesn't have that really nice, big clip, okay, when it opens and closes, but it's more of a softer type of feel. But for the most part, ceramic ball bearings is pretty much on all their knives, so that's why they're pretty much all pretty smooth, but that's just a little thing. It's nothing really bad. Now, what concerned me a little bit as far as the grip with the button lock, I didn't find any position that I took with this knife where I was going to kind of, falsely depress that button lock and have the blade close on me. It didn't feel like that at all when I was doing any cutting with it. Any type of holding, there's nothing that really, even if I hold this tight as I can, it doesn't really depress the button lock. You really got to kind of push this thing down in order to get this thing to close, all the way. That you got to really push the button all the way down. So I didn't find any problem with me accidentally like engaging the release on the button lock. Now you would think that this would be probably a good stabber. I mean, it's got a heavy swedging here. It's a false edge, but there is some sharpness to it. So if you really wanted to kind of put an edge on the top here on the swedging part, you could probably do that pretty easily, because there is enough there to kind of promote for an edge with a little bit of work if you wanted to do that. I don't know why you would, because this is not a really powerful stabber. Essentially, being a spearhead, you would think it would be a good stabber, and it did. I did some stabbing tests with it, but it's not, again, that strong type of lockup, that strong type of blade. It's not a very thick blade as far as the ends here. I wouldn't recommend something like that. But as far as styling, in terms of the knife styling for me, I love that spear point look. I tried to do a couple different types of cutting demonstrations for you. Obviously, this is some food prep here. Listen, any knife can do food prep as long as you got a sharp edge. You know, you got a sharp knife, you're in the fight no matter what you do. This happened to be not as sharp as some of the other or all of the other RoseCraft blades I've gotten, but definitely sharp enough to kind of get through whatever testing I was doing with it. The grip that I was taking here as far as jimping on the top, which is not really jimping, it's a thin profile on the blade, was fairly comfortable, but you'll see later on as I'm cutting some harder materials that it was definitely digging into the skin. It actually cut into my thumb when I was pressing really hard onto the blade when I was cutting some harder materials, but it went through this food prep, you know, pretty well. The zip ties is probably not the best test for me to start using this knife or testing this knife with, because you notice with a little force, I probably didn't tighten them up tight enough, but you notice how the blade is kind of bending under the pressure a little bit to kind of get through it, and also the sharpness level, if it was a little bit better, maybe it would have got through it, but it did the job. It got through it. But what I did notice is right after I did this, that I experienced quite a bit of blade wiggle from the blade bending a little bit. So again, I do this test so you don't have to, just to show you how much you can get away with this knife and what you should and shouldn't do with it. The important thing about all these demonstrations, guys, is just to show you the knife works. Even if I went to push it a little harder than it was designed to be pushed, it kind of lived to tell the tale another day. It's just a matter of knowing capabilities of the knife and to know what you should be using it for as an EDC tool. But it's definitely a great slicer. I was slicing the water hose, everything, you know, as far as a slicing tool, cutting cordage, cutting the polyurethane rope that you saw there, and you're going to see next, I'm going to be cutting some electric cord. Took a little job to get through it, but it got through it. So as a slicer, the knife works. The knife definitely knifes. Now here's some Home Depot special lighter knot or fat wood, whatever you want to call it. It can definitely process wood. Now this is where it got a little painful for me. See that grip I'm taking where I'm kind of jimping it with my thumb, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on the blade there. It got through it. It was cutting really well. So if you need to process firewood, process wood for a fire, you can definitely do it. But it left an indentation on my thumb from all that pressure of cutting into this wood, that it kind of actually cut into my thumb, because it is a thin blade and there's somewhat of a sharp edges there. You could probably actually spark a fire rod on it. If I actually should have tried that. But that is just to be noted, that if you're going to take that grip, honestly, simply just putting a pair of gloves on would kind of, you would avoid basically hurting your thumb. But just to be noted that type of grip does the job. It got through the fire, the lighter knot and all that, but it was very painful on the thumb to put all that pressure when you don't really have jimping there. It did the job, gave me some nice curls, it cut into it. A nice grip. Other than that jimping there, it was a nice grip. But again, if I had gloves on, it would have been perfectly fine. Inspecting the blade after I was done, I didn't notice any edge rolling, any chips or anything like that, other than the wiggle in the blade after doing that zip tie test the first time. The blade was still able to open and close fine, but again, good purchase on the blade. You can do that jimping on top with your thumb as long as you're not doing some heavy cutting, but it will hurt if you're really pressing hard on the top of that. But if you're doing a normal grip like that, button lock is not going to deploy. Everything seems fine, and it's good purchase in the handle. I purposely try to do the same type of test with all the knives, so this way you can get an idea of what the knife could handle and what it was designed for and how it fares with all these different types of demonstrations. The only thing that I would do in terms of design, you see this little piece here, the end of the handle here. If there was a little bit of an uplift here, like a little bit of a swell here, it would kind of just uplift the pinky a little bit and feel like that I had a little bit more grip. I know that this is probably the design that Andy was going for, but my personal opinion, what I would prefer is a little bit more of an uplift here, so it kind of just it hugs, your hand is able to hug the handle, how some of the other RoseCraft blades handles are made with their G10. But for the most part, it wasn't a big problem. I still felt comfortable with this, other than the jimping here that really hurt my thumb. I did feel enough purchase in the handle to feel that it was comfortable for like just using it as an everyday EDC. And guys, listen, it's a handsome knife. It's the fit and finish is very, very well done. The steel liners, no sharp points, no hot spots or anything like that. It's just a very well made knife. Like pretty much all of the RoseCraft blades are very well made, excellent fit and finish, great color options, great options in the styling of the knife. They definitely style. They definitely, scream out just being fun knives to carry every day. And the red and black, of course, my favorite. So there you have it, guys. This is the Castoria from RoseCraft Blades. Very happy with the knife, but understanding what its purpose is and what you're supposed to be doing with the knife. So hope you enjoyed this, guys. Until the next knife or next sword, peace out, everybody. Ciao.